Oops, hold on. All right, 49ers Web Zone No Huddle podcast is on the air. We are simulcasting with the legendary Bay Area radio personality from the Krueger
Oh,
Show.
oh.
You know who it is. It's Larry Krueger. Larry, what's up, man?
What's up, Al? Good to see you, man. We're talking some
Good.
Niners. It's we've had a heat wave here in the East Bay. It's probably another near 100-degree day. So if you see my somewhat fat face start to be shiny, it's called sweat. Sweat.
There's a tornado warning here in upstate New York, which we never get. So
Really?
hopefully it won't come here for like another hour, but we'll
My
see how it
sister,
goes. But
my sister lives in Connecticut. Wasn't it Hurricane Sandy? Is that what it was?
I think it's like Burl or
Well, no,
or something
wasn't
like
it Hurricane Sandy a couple years ago that?
Oh, recently, yeah, yep.
That got all the way to New Jersey and all the way up there.
Once in a while we get hit with stuff, but for the most part, New York, we don't have to worry about the weather, so it's good. Other than like the depressing, December through March when you want to kill yourself because it's gray for 3 months out of the year. But other than that, that crippling depression, it's okay. So. But I'll tell you what, though, Larry, look, football's around the corner, man. I mean, training camp is a week and a half away now. I cannot wait. And I wanted to talk to you, and one of the reasons I asked you wanted to do this because I know you're great with the young players. I remember there was a guy, I think his name was Purdy, Brock something or other, a couple years ago. You were really high on this Purdy guy.
Iowa State guy, if I remember.
And something like that. And you were like, this Purdy guy, when he had to play, he might be okay. And everybody's like, Larry, you're crazy. And it turns out you were right. And you had your eyes on him right at the beginning of camp and OTAs right away. I know you were all about Purdy.
Yeah.
Some of these young guys coming in there. I mean, the Niners have so many established players that we know about, obviously Kittle and Williams and Debo and everybody. But who are some young guys that you're excited about, whether it's a rookie that they drafted, an undrafted free agent, or just a young player? Who are some guys that are on your mind right now?
The more I watch him, Tanner Mordecai, who is another quarterback, who played this last year at Wisconsin. But man, I mean, I've talked to a lot of my buddies who are scouts, and there's a little bit of a groundswell of support for Tanner Mordecai. I talked to Brian Greasy about him. He said that Luke Fickell said if there was one player at Wisconsin that he would pound the table for, an old scouts term, on draft day. Some of these guys, that's kind of its own category. Who's a player that you would bang the table for? In other words, we need to draft this guy, and you pound your fist on the table. And he said for him, it would be Tanner Mordecai. And this is a guy who, they had Tanner Bortolini, they had Braylon Allen. It wasn't like they didn't have anybody else in this draft. And Mordecai did not look, if you looked at his Wisconsin numbers, Al, he didn't put up big numbers. I mean, he put up muted numbers, especially compared to what he did the years prior for SMU in a different conference and a much more prolific offense. But the one thing that Mordecai's got is he's got 4.46 speed. He's got experience. He's a winner. He's a competitor. He's a fiery competitor. This guy broke his hand in the Iowa game. And according to Fickell, there was never a doubt whether he would play in their ReliaQuest Bowl game against LSU. And when they asked him about it, he's like, oh, hell yeah, I'm playing. This guy broke his throwing hand 5 weeks before a meaningless bowl game and played against a really good LSU defense. And in that game, threw for 378 yards and 3 touchdowns and no picks. Now, they lost the game because LSU's better than Wisconsin. But, the guy played, as I said, one of his better games 5 weeks after breaking a hand. So he's a leader. He's a quiet leader. He reminds me a lot of Purdy in the way that he's mastered all the drills in the mini camp and then the OTAs. It's like what you're really looking for is which quarterback looks bored. And that's what Brock Purdy looked like in 2022. And that's what Mordecai looks like to me right now. He just looks bored. Like, it's like, okay, these drills, I've done them a million times.
Yeah.
But he's mastering each one of these drills. And then he's got the big time physical speed. He's got decent size. He doesn't have quite the downfield touch that Purdy has. He does not quite as accurate as Purdy. But I think there's a very good chance that Tanner Mordecai is going to be more efficient moving the football team in the preseason than either Brandon Allen or Josh Dobbs. I think it's going to make for a very interesting cut down. And I would put it at 60-40 that Mordecai makes the team over one of those two other quarterbacks.
Well, you mean, yeah, they're just band-aids, right? That's all those two guys
Yeah.
are. It's not like there's any long-term commitment to the Niners for them. So I could definitely see something like that happening. It would be good to have somebody behind Brock that you really feel good about if the worst happens. I mean, Dobbs can maybe win you some games here and there, and I guess Brandon Allen maybe can too. But that's nobody. If disaster strikes, I don't feel good about either one of those guys coming in, to make a playoff run or anything like that. There are 4 names I want to throw at you, and they're all undrafted guys.
Okay.
And there's different reasons for all of them and different timelines where I think they can make an impact. But the first, I'm really worried about the run defense. And I know you have to make me feel better about Jordan Elliott and some of these guys they brought in because I know you're higher on them than I am. But Evan Anderson from Florida Atlantic, 6'3", 326. He's a guy I'm going to have my eye on. Maybe he's one of those gems that the Niners found that they can plug in the middle and help with the run defense. What do you think of him?
They really like him. They really like him, and he's down to 315, and was as high as 360 at Florida Atlantic. And so when you're watching his college film, you have to look at what year, what edition of this guy's body we're talking about, because he's gotten as high as 360. And at 360, he doesn't look like he can move well enough. But at 315, he does look like he can move well enough. And, I don't know that he's a 6'3" player. I think he's probably more like DJ Jones. I think he's more like 6'1" and change. Okay. But whatever, we'll see. But he's really, really strong. I mean, functional strength. This guy can split a double team as good as almost any defensive tackle I've seen in recent memory. I mean, he's really, really strong at the point of attack. So he's, I mean, the Niners have 2 really impressive 4th string defensive tackles in this camp. Evan Anderson, Florida Atlantic rookie, and Shaquille Brown, who is a second-year player who they tried to get as an undrafted free agent last year, but they lost out to Tennessee in the bidding. He went to Tennessee, then he sprained his ankle in preseason, and he basically didn't play this year. But, man, I mean, watching Shaquille Brown, he's got a frame and explosiveness and power and strength and speed. I mean, there's a lot to like there. So those 2 guys, Evan Anderson and Shaquille Brown, I think are going to give Kalia Davis and T.Y. McGill and Kevin Givens everything, that they want and then some. They're probably going to go 5 defensive tackles, and those 5 will be Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, most likely Jordan Elliott, Kevin Givens, and 1 between Anderson, Brown, McGill, and Kalia Davis. So
yeah, I just think Collins and Hargrave is more pass rushers, and you just need that DJ. I want to see them bring in a DJ Jones type of guy who's just going to, you play on base down, stop the run. That's the defensive tackle I'm looking for to someone to step up and do that.
But it's interesting, I have you watched any of the Hard Knocks with the New York Giants the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I'm kind of obsessed,
you've seen it?
Yeah.
So the New York Giants took the defensive coordinator away from the Tennessee Titans. And they showed us, we were privy to, his name's Shane Bowen. And Shane Bowen comes in, he's a first-year defensive coordinator now with the New York Giants. And he was talking because, this is one of the things, a lot of personnel directors and GMs will do is they'll have the coaches come in and, hey, let's talk about the traits that you think are vitally important position by position so that we can go get you the guys that you actually are going to want.
Yeah.
And so it's a really important conversation. So they actually had Shane Bowen talking about his theories and philosophy of defense. And he made a point that I thought was so interesting to hear because from what I can gather, this is the new mindset of how to play defensive line in the NFL. And that is 4 guys that all can rush the passer, that can line up and win one-on-one. That you can just put your hand in the ground and go, and you can beat the guy in front of you. And that's what, when he was talking about his defensive line, he's like, I want guys who can attack. I want guys who can pass rush. I want 4 guys who can put their hand in the ground and beat the guy in front of them and rush the passer. And that's kind of the new thing. So like if you watch Dallas has Jonathan Hankins. Jonathan Hankins is a gigantic run stuffer, but he has no pass rush ability at all. And I think if you look at Philly, when Philly won the Super Bowl with Foles. Their D line was made up of four guys that could all rush the quarterback. And I think one of the impetus between the driving force between the Niners going after Hargrave was that they want, everybody on their line to be a pass rusher. And so they gave away some good run defenders, and we'll get into that in a minute, but they gave away 4 or 5 good run defenders to go pay Hargrave big money to be a pass rusher. And why did they not show any interest in Kinlaw? Because Kinlaw's not a pass rusher. So everybody on the line, in theory, has got to be somebody that can rush the passer. And the reason teams are going for this is because if you put a defensive tackle out there that can't rush the passer, they literally will drop the guard or center in front of him. He'll deep set and he'll just look to combo block somebody else, and he'll let that guy go because that guy couldn't sack the quarterback to save his life. So we're in an era now where you got to be able to rush the passer, or you're not even worthy of a roster spot. And if you look at the Niners, they had Ridgeway 2 years ago. They had DJ Jones like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
This last year, they didn't have anybody. They had Armstead, and then he went down. Hargrave's more of a pass rusher. Givens is more of a one-gap penetrator. Kalia Davis, one-gap penetrator. T.Y. McGill, one-gap penetrator. So that's kind of, it's hard to be good against the run when you don't have a defensive tackle that really is good against the run. And I think Jordan Elliott and Collins will be upgrades from Givens and McGill and Kalia, but they also have to replace Armstead. And Armstead was pretty good against the run.
Right. Yeah. I love the Collins pickup. I'm worried about Elliott. I'm not going to pretend I sat and watched him in all these Browns games. I didn't. But from when I went to school on him, it seemed like he was a little bit all over the place in the run game. So that worries me.
He was Al, the numbers. I mean, John Lund sent it to me, a breakdown from PFF. He was PFF's number 6 defensive tackle against the run last year. Number 6 in the entire league.
I saw those metrics. Yeah, I think I read something from Mary Kay Cabot, who covers the Browns, and she said he was kind of, he would just have lapses or be all over the place. He'd have his good moments, but we'll see. I mean, look, the Niners have Chris Kocurek. How many guys has he brought in that you're lukewarm on, and they end up being really good for this team? So,
I love this guy in the draft. When he was coming out of Texas, I loved him. Or coming out of Missouri, I loved him. He started at Texas and then transferred to Missouri, but he was a young player in the draft. He's been in the league he was a 2020 draft choice. He's only 26. So he was a young player coming out. He's 6'4", 300 pounds with great feet. He's got the ability to rush the passer. He's been underutilized in Cleveland for sure. I mean, he's been underwhelming to this point, which is why they got him for relatively nothing.
Other side of the ball, Jake Brendel's getting older. I think he's a replacement level center. He's certainly not the future at the position. We had Matt Miller, who covers the draft for ESPN, on the show. He's actually a Niners fan too.
Yeah.
In one of his favorite additions for the Niners, we have the clip up on our YouTube station right now from talking about it. Drake Nugent, the center out of Michigan. Yeah. And I don't know that he's someone that's going to make an impact this year, but definitely someone who Matt thought could be the starting center maybe next year, maybe the year after, but somebody they're going to develop into that. Where are you on Nugent?
I love him. Absolutely love him. Now, I did Stanford pregame for a number of years, so I'm very familiar with Nugent. He was the captain. He's a tough guy. He's a smart guy. He's shorter than ideal, right? So you're looking at a group of offensive linemen. They're all 6'3", 6'4". He's 6'1" and change. But
about 300 pounds. He's smaller.
But he's absolutely a leverage player. And you could see him, his 2-hand shiver was shocking some of the defensive tackles in the OTAs. I mean, this guy will lift you off your cleats. And he's really strong. He's really broad. He's 6'1", but what he lacks in height, he makes up for in overall width. I mean, that old saying, it's a $5 cab ride to get around this guy. This guy is wide. This is a wide-bodied guy. And he played well at Stanford, and then he played at Michigan. He was outstanding. He was the all first team all conference center in the Big Ten in a league that's full of really good offensive linemen. So, and he was the guy who made all the calls on a very talented Michigan line that was great running the ball. So
Yeah.
I think Nugent is really good. I like Nugent and Pooney a lot. And to me, if you told me that the Niners were going to sit Feliciano and Brendel for Pooney and Nugent, looking for more power and pop in the run game, that wouldn't shock me. It would not shock me at all. I think Brendel, who goes about 285, really put up bad film last year in that Cincinnati game against
Yeah.
DJ Reader. I mean, Reader was just toying with him and moving him around any which way. So the Niners have a ton of competition at center. Brendel can play center, Pro Bowl alternate a year ago. Ben Barch was brought in late in the year. Chris Forster really likes Barch.
Mhm.
He can play center. Nugent can play center. Feliciano would rather play guard. He says he's better at guard, but he's got experience at center. Pooney can play center. I believe Nick Sacco probably can play center. Bryson Mays, the guy they got from Southern Miss, can play center. I mean, they got a bunch of guys who can play center. And but yeah, to me, they've got 4 offensive linemen that we'll keep our eye on this summer: Bryson Mays, Jarrett Kingston, Dominic Pooney, and Drake Nugent. Of those 4, to me, Pooney and Nugent look like they could be day one starters, plug and play guys. I know that sounds crazy because Nugent was undrafted, but Nugent, I think, gives you better power in the run game. I think he's, you got to start building this wall around Brock Purdy. And I think
especially
Nugent
in the interior. Yep.
Right. I think Nugent and Pooney might be an upgrade on Feliciano and Brendel. And I kind of like the idea of, maybe using Feliciano as a jack of all trades backup inside. And then Jalen Moore is your jack of all trades third tackle backup outside.
Mhm.
And then, pick a couple guys after that: Burford, Barch, Hubbard, Zakel, Kingston. But I think Nugent and Pooney are players.
The third guy I wanted to bring up, when I look at the Niners running back position, I mean, we know McCaffrey is the alpha dog, obviously, but also they got to scale back his carries a little bit. And when I mean scale it back, I don't think they're going to take him off the field in a 20-17 game. I don't think you're going to see him on the field when they're up 30-7, like he was last year in some spots. So I think that's where they'll scale him back. But they do have to identify some guys behind him. Now, we know Eli Mitchell can play when he's healthy. He's not really healthy, and he's on last year of his deal. Jordan Mason, the fans love him. I love him. I love to watch him run. There's some pass protection issues there. I feel like if Kyle really liked him, he would have been on the field. So I feel like he's on the bubble with the roster for sure. We know they drafted Garendo. They really like him, and he may end up being the kick returner. But the guy that I want to ask you about is Cody Schrader out of Missouri, because we know that the Niners find these running backs, these undrafted guys that come out of nowhere, end up playing well. And he was actually, I think he was top 7 in the Heisman, top 8, something like that last year. Do you think he's a guy that can sneak in a roster spot, or there's just too many people ahead of him?
Well, I mean, the numbers don't add up, right? I mean, you're going to keep typically 10 or 11 running backs or wide receivers, and they're deep at wide receiver. So you look at them off, at running back, you're probably going to go with 5. And right now you got 7.
Mhm.
You got Christian McCaffrey and Juszczyk as your starters. And then you got Mitchell, Garendo, Patrick Taylor. That's 5. Jordan Mason, 6. Schrader, 7. So I guess you could look at this and say, if it's just everybody's healthy, right? Because, there's always injuries. It's football. But let's just say everybody's healthy. If you're saying, Krug, wager on this, I would wager, based on what I know, that Patrick Taylor and Jordan Mason would get cut.
That's fair.
I don't like that. One, Taylor looks great. I mean, as far as he's really a great athlete. I mean, it's a big, tall receiver who's got great athleticism. Kind of reminds me a little bit of James Starks, who was also in Green Bay years ago.
Yeah, I remember him.
Kind of a long, rangy, athletic running back who runs upright. Well, that's this guy too. But I don't get the pickup of Patrick Taylor. To me, that didn't make sense. I don't see any way he can make the team. And then I think I like Mason, even though I can appreciate Mitchell never fumbles, and he almost always falls forward, and he's really good at finding, the little nooks and crannies and finding openings that aren't really openings. And he has hardly any negative yardage plays. I understand the value proposition of Elijah Mitchell, but Jordan Mason's upside is so spectacular. But Shanahan has proven to us time and time again that he likes Mitchell more than Mason, and he's in charge. So if I had to bet, I would say today Taylor and Mason get cut. But if it was me, I would be on the lookout for any kind of regression from Juszczyk, and I would like to see what Guerrero looks like as a fullback.
That's
because how many more years do you really have? I mean, like, Dallas needs a back. If you cut Elijah Mitchell or Jordan Mason, they could wind up in Dallas, and Dallas could win with those guys. So I don't like the idea.
In a heartbeat.
I don't like, and they would get picked up, but I mean, I'm more concerned about, the Niners and their pursuit of a Super Bowl. And if they went to Dallas, that would help Dallas. Then I think about this running back room, and I'm thinking, what does Juszczyk have left? I mean, he's 33, 34. He's probably got 1 year left. Last year, they tried to replace him or find his replacement in Jack Coletto. They loved Coletto as a brain, but he just didn't have an NFL body. Now they've got a guy with major NFL body, right? I mean, Isaac Guerrero is a revelation at 225 pounds. He runs in the 4.3s. And if you watch him run around out there, you can see what kind of athlete he is. He's just a crazy athlete. What if with having Aiyuk and Debo and Pearsall and Kittle and CMC, you could actually flip it in the flat to a fullback sized running back in Guerrero who's got 4.3 speed? I mean, don't you see the potential for that? I mean, to me, that's exciting as hell. So I know Juszczyk's already redone his deal. So he's very, very likely to be on this roster, and it will probably get solved by an injury or whatever. But there's no chance in hell that I'm cutting Cody Schrader. If Jordan Mason, Isaac Guerrero, and Cody Schrader all look good in camp and in the preseason, I'm not exposing any of those guys to waivers. And I don't know what I'm doing, but Juszczyk would be the guy if you cut Juszczyk a year too early, what's the downside? So Guerrero is not quite the blocker. I mean, they don't use Juszczyk that much as a lead blocker. He's kind of the jack of all trades. He's highly paid, but he's at the end. I mean, he's at the end. He's probably got a year or two left. And if you cut Guerrero, you're going to rue the day you did it. Same with Schrader, same with Mason. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm telling you other than I know Cody Schrader's a hell of a back. I mean, looking at him in the SEC, I thought, okay, he may not run the great 40 time for the stopwatch, but he's going to go in the 4th round. He didn't get drafted at all. And the guy that I loved in the draft running back wise, and I kept touting him all spring, was Blake Corum, who went to the Rams in the 3rd or 4th round. This guy in a lot of ways is a poor man's Blake Corum. They're literally the same guy. They're both 5'9", not as athletic as you would want. Don't run quite the 40 that you want, but they're very productive. Primary runners who also had other runners that were on their team with them, other weapons. I love Cody Schrader. He had one run in minicamp where it was just an off tackle play. He bounced it to the outside, and between me and the sideline, there were all the players. So I couldn't really see, and he's 5'9", so I couldn't really see where he was going to bounce out of the thing down the sideline. So I'm looking at him, and it's kind of like watching somebody going rafting, and they go under the water, and you're not sure where they're going to pop back up because it's all predicated on the speed of the water, right? Well, it's like I didn't know where this guy was going to kind of pop up, and I'm looking like upfield, and this guy pops up like 10, 12 yards further downfield than I even thought he was. And I'm thinking to myself, that is not 4.6 speed. That is 4.45 speed. So I think you can say, like Jerry Rice and others, this guy's field fast. He's not stopwatch fast. He's field fast. And got great balance. And one of the great lines that I read from some scout who knows him said, this is the kind of guy that if you let him in your building, you'll never get him out of the building because he's just that hard of a worker.
It just feels like a 49ers kind of signing pick, something that's going to come out of nowhere, and you're like, oh my God, how did everybody miss on him? And he makes an impact. It just kind of feels that way. For me.
Look at the running backs on the roster. Joe Williams is not on the roster, 4th round pick. Trey Sermon's not on the roster, 3rd round pick. Jordan Mason is on the roster, undrafted. Elijah Mitchell's on the roster, deep, 6th-round pick in 2021. So, Bobby Turner has got a great eye for backs, but they seem like they have a better eye for undrafted backs and day 3 backs than they do for the backs that they, prioritize drafting on day 2. And we'll see.
Yeah,
Because
Wilson,
Guerendo is a size speed guy, but to me, he's not a pick and slide guy who can, find a hole and weave. No, he's a trap, he's got a big engine on him, and he's a trap runner. You open, he's a one cut and go kind of a guy. So, and he was a great receiver in high school because that's what he was, a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really eager to see what, when we get in the preseason. I'll make the prediction right now. Cody Schrader will outperform Isaac Guerendo in the preseason.
The tight end position, it looks like it's set. Kittle, obviously. Logan Thomas, I really like that pickup. But again, it's a Band-Aid 1 year type thing. Then you have Eric Saubert, who I think is going to make the team. Then you have Mason Pline, who's interesting to me. 6'6". You got to eventually find the heir apparent at that position. It doesn't look like it's going to work out with Cam Latu. Braden Willis, late round draft pick. Again, maybe he could be a rotational type guy, but I just wonder, you got someone with that size. Can he come in? Can he push his way onto the roster? Can he eventually be at least a tight end 2, and maybe somebody down the line that, who knows? He's one of those guys I wonder about.
I stumbled onto this guy. I think I was watching a Tony Pauline or listening to a Tony Pauline draft podcast, like late in the football season. He was going through sleepers and guys that were beneath the radar. And he's like, man, there's this basketball player from Ferris State who transferred to Furman, who's really nice at tight end, named Mason Pline. So I YouTubed him immediately, and I couldn't find any football on him. I could only find basketball. But then the more I started watching his basketball highlights, this guy wasn't just a basketball player. This guy's he was like the Aaron Gordon of Ferris State. I mean, this guy's reverse jamming and catching lobs. And he had a way, way, way above the rim kind of a game in basketball. Then I started reading the bio on the guy. They list him at 6'8". Now he might be 6'6", but they list him at 6'8". 6'8", 250 pounds. And then I saw an interview that Guy Haberman did with his college coach, and his college coach is like, man, this guy's tough. This guy's not a basketball player. This guy's really tough. Then I started reading more about Pline's, skill proposition. He's got 10.5-inch hands. So now we're talking about a basketball player, but a converted basketball player who's got major athleticism. I mean, whatever athletic questions you would have, if you watch this guy play basketball highlights wise, you'd be like, oh, I have no questions about him, because he's just so athletic on a basketball floor that you're like, oh my God. If you can reverse jam on the break in basketball, you're a good enough athlete to play tight end. That takes greater athleticism to run and jump and jam and reverse jam. And, this guy's got plenty of athleticism. What was the kicker for me, where I was just like, oh my God, this is a great prospect. He is a mechanical engineering major. So anybody who knows engineers are really, really smart. Mechanical engineers are even smarter than regular engineers. That's what Jack Coletto was last year. And I asked Jack, I said, Jack, what's your advantage? What's your strength of your game? And he's like, my strength is my mind. He's like, I can memorize every one of these formations and all the complexities and shifts and motions. I got them all down already. And that's my advantage. And I asked Huschek about him late in camp, and he said, Jack Coletto's the smartest football player I've ever been around in my entire career. And this is a guy who played at Harvard, who knows the difference between, smart and dumb football players. So he said that Coletto was the smartest. So now you got Pline, who's got crazy athleticism. He's 6'8". His college coach claims he's tough. He's got 10.5-inch hands, and he's a mechanical engineering major. And all I'm saying is, sign me up, man. I'm sold. I don't know if the kid can play, but I know that I want him in my camp. He's got great size, great strength. And then they've used him in the mini camp. I thought he was utilized heavily. Now, to me, there's two tight ends that are really standing out. Tungs is just a guy. Saubert is a veteran. He looks pretty strong, but there's nothing really special there that I can tell. Latu looks like a really good athlete, but he, I kind of question his love of the sport, and his hands and his coordination, everything. To me, he's like an athlete, but not really a tight end. Logan Thomas, I think he's got a really good chance to make the team if he's healthy, but I'm thinking that maybe he's not healthy. But the two guys that look like a lot are Pline and Braden Willis. Braden Willis, I'm absolutely convinced, is going to have a terrific year. Because
really?
This guy,
you're that high on him?
Oh my God. This guy can separate down the field. He's a receiver. I mean, this is a terrific receiver. This is a really good receiver with really good hands who can get separation. Now, he's not big. He's 6'3", 240. But Braden Willis has got great down the field receiving ability. I don't know if he can block a defensive end, but I know you can flex him out. I mean, I think Braden Willis, if you said what guy looked the most, one of the players that I saw this spring who looked to be the most improved, he was on the short list. I mean, he was incredibly improved. And then when you look at the fact that he had the gold helmet designation, so they were in love with him as a prospect. And a lot of it has to do with what's between the ears and what's in the chest. He's got tons of heart. He's really smart. He kind of played an H-back role at Oklahoma. He definitely didn't play as much as I thought he potentially could as a rookie. But if you're looking for a guy in year 2 that's going to step up, it's him. I don't know if he's a blocker, but he is a really good, explosive receiver. So I like Kittle and Pline and Willis to be their 3 tight ends. And maybe it might just be Kittle and Willis, and Pline may be practice squad. But I think the rest of the guys are going to get cut. That'll be my guess.
All right. I'm really sick of talking about Brandon Aiyuk, but I haven't talked to you about it yet. So
Sure.
I do want to do that a little bit. Here's the way I've been looking at this whole situation. We know the Niners tend to do contracts late, but this feels a little more like a DeForest Buckner situation. I don't know that it's going to end up that way, but we knew Nick Bosa was going to sign. We knew Warner was going to get an extension. It looked like Debo at the time, he was the whole offense the year before. With Aiyuk, the way I've kind of been explaining it, talking about it, is kind of playing devil's advocate, where the Niners are coming from a spot where, listen, we love you, right? You're our top wide receiver, downfield wide receiver, but you were targeted the 36th most in the league last year. 2 years ago, the 28th most. We just don't throw the ball that much. You're not going to get 180 targets like a CeeDee Lamb or an Amon-Ra St. Brown. And Aiyuk is saying, well, I'm a top 10 wide receiver in this league, and the going rate is 30 million. That's where I want. So maybe they end up more at like 28 million. But for me, if you're the Niners, the way I guess I'm kind of looking at it is, if they plan to change their offense to where Debo is not there next year, and Aiyuk now gets more targets, so he goes from 110 to 140, right? Like, we're going to pay you for what you're going to do, so we'll give you the 30 million. But if not, if his role is still kind of a 1A, 1B type thing, whatever you want to put it, because the offense runs through McCaffrey and they just don't throw as much, maybe the Niners aren't coming off of their number. And if somebody like Ricky Pearsall looks really good early on, they just let this 5th year play out and they don't have to get rid of Debo. Where are you on this? Do you think they're going to come to an agreement? Do you think Aiyuk is worth the 30 million?
Well, he's a great player, and in a lot of ways, he's one of the most efficient players, right? I mean, he got his 28 catches of 20 plus yards. He did it in 105 targets. The guy who, Tyreek had 29, he led the league. He did it in 181. And whoever was second did it in 170. And Aiyuk did it in 105. So efficiency wise, I mean, efficiency is a lot of the name of the game too. He's incredibly efficient. And then if you're looking for, is he a diva? No, he's not a diva. He doesn't sit there in front of his locker and me. He's not that kind of a guy. Does he block with a vengeance in the run game? Yeah, he does. I mean, he almost acts like it's his personal mission. So in a lot of ways, on a run-first football team, can you come up with a better receiver than this guy? He's got the body that's going to last. He's got great, he's 6'1", but he's got long arms, so he plays like 6'4". He blocks, with aggression. In a lot of ways, he's the perfect player for them. But they're also staring at the biggest cap jump in all of football. I mean, they're gonna take a quarterback that's making $900,000. They're gonna pay him $60 million. So there is nobody in the NFL other than the Niners that next year will take a player who's making $900,000 and then pay him $60 million.
Yeah.
So
Plus,
they're
Bosa's making quarterback money.
right.
Bosa's contract is huge.
And also they've got 5 or 6 or 7 of the best players at their position in the sport, and they're paying all those guys market rate. And Mayoko made the point, hey, you can't pay everybody at market rate. Eventually it's going to catch up with you. So on one hand, I understand why, and Aiyuk, these guys, receivers typically only get one big payday. So I understand why, he's going to this great lengths. I also understand why he's doing all the things he's doing. It's because he has no leverage, and there's no way for him to generate leverage other than talking. So so he'll do some of the talking, and he'll have the media do some of the talking by putting things out there. And I'm wearing a Pirates hat, and I'm this, and I'm that, and all this. I could be a Niner, but I could be a Commander, but I could be a Steeler, but I love Jaden Daniels, and Jaden Daniels can take my game to the next level. And it's like he said an awful lot of things. Things. I'm not sure if you asked me a direct question on this, or I'm just kind of going.
I just kind of want to know where your head's at. What would you do?
I love the guy. I think I would want to pay him, but it's not quarterback. So the supply and demand thing, it's like quarterbacks. Why do they all get paid so much? Because the supply is far less than the demand. But in wide receiver, that's no longer the case. Every year that goes by, the receiving draft is deeper and deeper and deeper, and there's always a bunch of good receivers. And heck, Kansas City pivoted off of Tyreek Hill. They've still found a way to win championships. And they have Mahomes. Okay. But I mean, they've been gotten it done without Tyreek. We saw Green Bay say goodbye to Devontae, despite the fact he had an incredible thing going with Rodgers. We've seen teams pivot away from some wide receivers, Diggs and others. They've moved on, and it's worked out okay. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, on one hand, I love Aiyuk. I think he's the perfect wide receiver for the Niners. But he's doing what's in his best interest. But what's in the Niners' best interest?
Right.
I don't think it's to pay him $30 million this year. I think it's to have him play on the 5th-year option and evaluate at the end of the year, because right now we don't know what kind of year Debo's going to have, and Debo looks like he's super motivated to have an incredible year. Yeah. We also don't know if Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing are bad, good, great, Hall of Fame. We don't know. I mean, if those guys are awesome, I don't know that I want to pay $30 million for Aiyuk. If those guys both can't walk and chew gum at the same time, then maybe I better pay Aiyuk. Next year at this time, we're going to know what Cowing is. We're going to know what Pearsall is. We're going to know what Debo did. And at that point, it seems like you're going to have all the information. Mayoko's suggesting that they're going to make him play on the 5th-year option, franchise tag him at the end of the year if they can't agree to a deal, and maybe trade him in the spring for whatever they can get. I'd be interested in asking him just directly. You have said some things that we can't take back. For example, you said that Jaden Daniels is the quarterback to help you take your game to the next level. I didn't make that up. You said it. So is that true? Do you want to play with Jaden Daniels? And if so, what are the Commanders offering? Because the Commanders have plenty that I would take in a trade for Brandon Aiyuk. I love Brandon Aiyuk, and I'm not in a rush to trade him. And I'm sure as hell not in a rush to hand him to Jaden Daniels and the Commanders in the division, in the conference. But what are they offering? They're offering Jonathan Allen. I'm interested. Are they offering Terry McLaurin? Are they offering Jahan Dotson? Are they offering Luke McCaffrey? Are they offering draft choices? Are they offering Emmanuel Forbes? Are they offering Jamin Davis? I mean, what exactly is the makeup of their offer? For the 49ers, I don't think it works, Al, to trade Brandon Aiyuk for even a first-round pick next year, because how do you look Trent Williams in the face and say, hey, big boy, this might be your last year, but we're going to get somebody next year that will help us the year after? I mean, that's not that's going to fall on deaf ears. So I don't think you can trade Aiyuk in your Super Bowl window for draft picks and win. I think the only way that you could even consider that is if New England said, we'll give you our first unprotected, because that could be a top 5. That could be the top pick in the draft. You might be able to, wind up getting the best tackle or pass rusher or whatever in the draft next April because you moved Aiyuk. So I think I would need, like I was saying the other day, if the Commanders came and really wanted him and they said, hey, we'll offer you McCaffrey's brother and Jonathan Allen and a conditional 2025 pick based on how McCaffrey and Aiyuk play this year, I'd do it. I would do it and get down the road and not think twice about it. I like Aiyuk, but I would take McCaffrey's brother and Jonathan Allen and a conditional pick and get it done. Or if New England came and they were offering their pick, I would do it. If they were offering Christian Gonzalez and a lesser pick, I would do that. If Denver came and they were offering Surtain, I think Surtain, I would do it. I think the Niners need a number 1 corner like a Christian Gonzalez or a Surtain more than they need an Aiyuk at this point. So that's how I feel about it. I like Aiyuk. I think he's the perfect guy. I don't understand why they wouldn't pay him, but they are in a very, very desperate situation. And it sounds like these other teams are just waiting for them to fold. Like, oh, you know what? They can't afford Aiyuk. We'll offer him a 3rd and a 4th in the 11th hour, and they'll have to do it. But they can't afford him this year if they want to. They may not be able to afford him down the road, but I'm not afraid to trade him. I wouldn't be afraid to trade him. I wouldn't trade him for just picks, and I wouldn't trade him for a 3rd and a 4th. For a 3rd and a 4th in next year's draft is a major loss. But if you could get Christian Gonzalez and a 2nd-round pick out of the Patriots, done. You can get Surtain and DJ Jones out of Denver, done. Somebody threw out a Cortland Sutton and a 3-way deal and a 2nd-round pick, done.
The elephant in the room is too. I mean, we talked about Purdy's contract, but you have Charvarius Ward, you have Lenore, you have Greenlaw, you have Hufanga, you have all these guys from the last year of their deals, Banks. So do they say to themselves too, all right, we can keep 3 or 4 of these guys and move on from Aiyuk and keep the defense together, keep that secondary together or whatever. I mean, Greenlaw, if he's healthy, Greenlaw's a top 10 linebacker. You saw what it looked like when he was out on the field last year. I mean, obviously you want him long-term. Ward's one of the top 5 corners in the league. Demo, arrows pointed up. He can play inside. He can play outside. You don't want to lose these guys. I mean, these are a big part of your next window. So that may be where they are with it too. And if Ricky Pearsall ends up being Puka Nacua light, or close to that or something like that, and you just gave Aiyuk $30 million, the Niners are probably like, oh shit, that was bad business on our part.
Plus, so you don't know what the young DBs are. Like, what's Luter? What's Womack? What's Ambry? What's can any of these guys step in a year if you sign Aiyuk and have to kiss off Ward and Lenore? Can any of those guys step in and play? Or do you then have to, use all your draft capital to find DBs to replace the DBs you let walk in free agency? So you have to there's a lot of evaluations that are tied together in this thing. I think Aiyuk is really, really special, and I would want to get it done. But, if he's the other question is this: what if you sign him to the $30 million contract and Debo outperforms him? Now you're getting rid of Debo at the end of the year, despite the fact that he's your best receiver, because you committed dollars to Aiyuk. Where if you make Aiyuk play on the 5th-year option, now you're basically saying, hey, guess what, buddies? You guys are competing now. You guys are really tight. Whoever's the best receiver is going to be here in 2025, and whoever's the second best receiver is going to be somewhere else. And that might be like, if you're the Niners, do you take away Aiyuk's motivation by paying him, or do you try to pit him and Debo against each other by making him play on the 5th-year option? And here's the other thing. There's a big dynamic in the locker room. Last year, I was standing at George Kittle's locker late in the year, and he's like talking about Aiyuk's contract. And he goes, somebody's got to pay that guy $25 million, $26 million. Okay, I mean, now that number's bigger than it was then. But I mean, do we want this to be this? I mean, like, any of these things could wind up being a distraction. Like if you make, like a lot of people are like, oh man, if you make Aiyuk come back and play on the 5th-year option, he's going to have a bad attitude. It's going to be a distraction. It could be, but what happens if you pay him and Debo outperforms him every single week? And now Debo's like, hey man, I guess I'm gone at the end of the year, even though it looks like I'm pretty valuable, but I guess I'm gone. I mean, what if all of a sudden that becomes dialogue? So there's always going to be somebody happy and somebody unhappy in your locker room, but you'd be a fool not to at least pay some attention to it because it has an impact on the room and the production in the room.
Larry, thanks so much for doing this simulcast with us. We had about 1,000 people watching this live. I'm sure like 998 of them were on Larry's station. But if you're watching Larry, please sign 49ers Web Zone YouTube as well. Ton of great guests, just like Larry on there. Please subscribe to us as well. And obviously the Krueger Show. If you're just watching this and not subscribe to that too. Larry, I appreciate the time, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, man, anytime. Love chopping it up with you.